The void was vast, endless, indifferent. To most species, space was a cradle, a place of order, of ancient civilizations maintaining their empires for millennia. But to humans, space was a frontier. The Terran expansion had pushed outward from Earth over the past 2 centuries, a slow but relentless tide of colonization. Kepri 4 was just another stepping stone, a jungle world teeming with predators, its storms unforgiving, its air heavy with the scent of decay. And it was home to Captain Elias Voss. He stood at the edge of an outcrop looking over the treetops as distant thunder rumbled. Even with humanity's advancements, armored exosuits, genetic augmentations, AI tactical support, Kepri 4 still found ways to kill. A world like this bred soldiers, not settlers. The latest reports from deep space colonies disturbed him. Entire settlements gone. No distress signals, no wreckage, just silence. The stars had always been dangerous, but this was different. And whatever was out there, it wasn't just picking off humans. It was hunting them. The jungle never slept. Even in the dead of night, something always moved. Voss's squad had learned that the hard way. Lieutenant Sienna Rourke, cybernetically enhanced reconnaissance expert, had once been dragged 10 meters by a predator before it died from her knife, and that was just the local wildlife. He moved through the base, a hardened outpost reinforced with pulse turrets and AI-controlled defense systems. Yet it always felt vulnerable. A storm brewed overhead, static energy crackling through the clouds. The air smelled charged, thick with ozone. Somewhere out there beyond human-controlled space, something was happening. His comms crackled to life. "Captain, we've detected another anomaly," said Sergeant Kowalski, a man who had survived 2 orbital drops without armor and still complained about Kepri's humidity. Voss exhaled. "Let me guess, another colony?" "Gone. No distress call. Just blank, like someone cut them out of reality. That made 5 in the last month. 5 settlements, thousands of people simply erased." Voss turned toward the operations table, where holographic displays outlined their universe's cold, expanding void. The darkness wasn't empty. Something was watching, and soon it would make a mistake. The Zerkai Dominion did not fear the unknown. They were the unknown. Their empire spanned thousands of systems, but their power was not in numbers. It was in terror. Other civilizations bent the knee. Humanity had not. In the hallowed chambers of the Daggerbrood, the Huntmasters prepared the next culling. Humans are stubborn. One chittered, its mandibles clicking as it watched a recording of a previous hunt. A young human colonist, weaponless, ragged, broken, tried to run before a Daggerbrood sliced him apart. The others in the chamber laughed. These creatures, these humans, were nothing new. Another species to break. Another species to tame, the bee. Daggerbrood had done this for millennia. There was no prey that could resist, and when their ships moved through the void, they left nothing behind. The mining colony on Perseus 9 had gone dark an hour ago. No distress beacon. No chatter, and then suddenly, a signal. "Mayday! Mayday! They're here!" They're static. Voss and his squad deployed immediately. Their dropship cut through the atmosphere of Perseus 9, sleek and silent, masked from enemy scanners. The colony was wrong. Buildings still stood, undamaged, but the streets were empty. No fires, no battle scars, just silence. Voss clenched his jaw. Something happened fast. They moved through the streets, weapons raised, signs of struggle, dropped tools, half-eaten, meals, but no bodies, until they found the center of the colony. The bodies were arranged. Some were hung from structures, flayed, their ribs cracked open like trophies. Others were lined up in grotesque formations as if positioned for display. Kowalski cursed. What the hell is this? Voss's stomach tightened. He knew ritualistic cruelty when he saw it. This wasn't just a massacre. This was a message. Rourke, knelt beside a corpse. Their weapons are missing. No signs of human gunfire. No spent rounds. No fighting back. It wasn't a battle. It was a hunt. The moment the realization hit, the ambush began. A blur of movement. A sharp clicking sound. Then, the shadows came alive. The moment the shadows came alive, the massacre began. The Zerkai moved like bladed ghosts, their exoskeletons reflecting dim light in shimmering slivers of obsidian and crimson. Voss's team barely had time to react before the first kill. Sergeant Kowalski fired first. His pulse rifle's energy, rounds slammed into an advancing Zerkai warrior, only to fizzle out against its bio-armored exoskeleton. "Weapons ineffective," Rourke shouted, already pivoting, her cybernetic reflexes saving her from the razor-edged claw that scythed through the air where her head had been. Voss fired a full burst, aiming for the joints. The Zerkai staggered but didn't fall. Then came the gas. A hissing canister landed at their feet, releasing a swirling green mist that clung to their skin like oil. "Masks! Now!" Too late. Kowalski dropped first, his limbs seizing, veins blackening. As the neurotoxin took hold, one by one his team collapsed. Muscles failed, vision blurred. Voss fought against it, staggering, reaching for his combat knife. A massive shape loomed over him, 4 jagged limbs gripping him like a vice. The last thing he saw before darkness took him was a set of glistening mandibles clicking in amusement. The hunt had begun. The first thing Voss registered was heat. Oppressive, humid, alien. Then came the pain, a dull, lingering ache, his muscles slow to respond. His head throbbed, his lungs burned. He opened his eyes. He was no longer on Perseus 9. The sky above him churned in unnatural hues, violet clouds, streaked with glowing green fissures as if the very air was fractured. A twisted alien jungle stretched endlessly in all directions, its towering trees twisted with bioluminescent veins. Other humans stirred around him, disoriented, confused, terrified. Above them, dark shapes hovered in the sky. Biodrones. There, insect-like carapaces pulsed with eerie blue light scanning the ground below. The realization hit. This wasn't a prison. It was a hunting ground. Voss forced himself up, scanning the area. His team was here, Rourke, Kowalski, Sahil, a few others. But many were missing. A voice boomed from above, deep and layered with an unnatural reverberation. "Prey has been released. Survival begins now." Voss tensed. The trees trembled. Something was coming. Then, a monstrous roar split the jungle. The hunt had begun. The first deaths came quickly. A young colonist sprinted into the trees, screaming, only for a black blur to drop from above, snapping him in half. Another was dragged into the undergrowth, his screams fading into gurgling silence. The Zerkai dagger brood moved like phantoms, striking with horrific precision, reveling in the fear. They had done this for centuries. They knew how. Prey reacted. The hunted always ran, scattered, and died alone, except something was different. Voss watched closely, eyes darting between his surroundings and the way the Zerkai moved. Patterns. The dagger brood relied on hunting formations, circling their prey before striking. Their movements were predictable, their approach calculated, and they weren't used to prey that fought back together. Voss clenched his jaw. "Rourke," he whispered. "Do you see it?" She nodded, eyes sharp. "They're coordinated, but they don't expect retaliation. They expect panic. Then we change the rules." Voss's voice was steady, unwavering. "We don't scatter." He turned to the survivors, eyes hard. "We are not prey." And the Zerkai were about to learn that. Voss moved quickly. His team began marking terrain, identifying weak points. Primitive. Weapons were fashioned. Spear tips from shattered biometal, slings from torn fabric. The jungle was no longer an enemy, it was a tool. The first counterattack happened that night. A lone dagger brood stalked through the undergrowth, its claws slick with blood, mandibles twitching as it searched for its next kill. It never saw the snare. A weighted vine snapped tight around its thorax, yanking it upward. Before it could screech, Rourke's blade punched into its exposed underbelly. It twitched, spasmed, went still. The body was left as a message. At dawn, the dagger brood found one of their own, hung from the jungle canopy, its black blood pooling into the soil. For the first time, the hunters hesitated. Voss watched from the shadows, lips curling. "They don't understand," Rourke whispered. Voss's grip tightened around his makeshift blade. "They will." The hunt had changed, and for the first time, the Zerkai knew fear. The jungle swallowed them whole. The Zerkai moved through the undergrowth in practiced formations, their black carapaces blending with the alien foliage, their mandibles clicking in eerie synchronization. But something was different. The prey wasn't running anymore. The first strike came without warning. A lone dagger brood lurched forward, scanning the tree line, only for a sharpened spear of scavenged biometal to drive through its throat from above. It twitched violently, black ichor spraying the jungle floor. The other Zerkai froze. Then another scream, one of their own, dragged into the shadows. Another. Then another. Voss crouched behind the trunk of a massive bioluminescent tree, his muscles coiled, knife, slick with alien blood. He watched, waited, calculated. The Zerkai relied too much on brute strength. They assumed they were the superior hunters. But humans? Humans were built for war. As dawn crept over the canopy, the first Zerkai corpse was left as a message. Its chitin cracked, its lifeless body strung up between twisted vines. The roles had changed, and for the first time the dagger brood hesitated. Voss's voice was a whisper in the darkness. Now they learn. The hunt had reversed. The Zerkai patrols, once confident, now moved cautiously, their movements erratic, their formations spread too thin. Voss's team was watching. Every fallen Zerkai weapon was salvaged, every piece of biometal repurposed. Primitive firearms were built, recharging cells ripped from their dead captors, shaped into crude but deadly energy traps. For every one human they killed, 5 of them fell. They were used to breaking their prey. They had never faced prey that adapted. Voss crouched over a captured comm unit, rerouting the frequency to pick up their enemy's chatter. A low, guttural voice hissed through the static. "They are not breaking," a second voice, sharper, filled with frustration. "Then break them harder." But Voss could hear it. The uncertainty, the fear. The jungle was filled with death, but the silence was new. The Zerkai no longer stalked with confidence. They were being hunted. That was the moment their leader understood. A chilling whisper from the comms, a voice edged with something the dagger brood had never known before. "They're hunting us back." The dagger brood were fracturing. Their tactics, once methodical, were unraveling. Voss and his team had learned something crucial. The Zerkai hierarchy was built on dominance, and dominance required fear. But fear was a double-edged weapon. They didn't understand humanity's ability to adapt. Their entire philosophy was built on prey running, prey dying alone. But humans didn't run, and humans didn't die alone. Kowalski was the first to strike. A single sniper shot, clean, precise, punched through the exoskeleton of a squad commander. The rest of the Zerkai formation hesitated. Voss watched them from above, his squad poised for the next strike. "They don't know what to do." Rourke murmured beside him, her blade gleaming in the dim light. Voss smiled coldly. "Then we decide. For them." The next Zerkai leader fell. Then another. The chain of command crumbled. The hunters were now aimless, confused, leaderless. Voss whispered into his stolen comm, broadcasting on their open channel. His voice was cold, controlled. "Run." Voss had been waiting for this moment. His team hacked into the alien surveillance system, accessing the central database of the hunting grounds. The truth was worse than they had imagined. This was not the only hunting arena. Scattered across the Zerkai Dominion, thousands of other humans were trapped in similar death worlds. Voss felt a cold rage settle in his chest. They weren't escaping. They were ending this. "We need to reach their command center," Sahil said, scanning the stolen data. "If we take out their primary control node, we can disable the entire hunting network. Then we bring hell to their doorstep," Kowalski growled. Voss nodded, his mind already forming the plan. No more running, no more surviving. It was time to burn the hunters to the ground. And when the Zerkai saw what real predators looked like, they would never hunt humans again. The night belonged to the Zerkai. At least it used to. Now the jungle was alive with human ghosts, slipping between shadows, setting traps, watching their enemy with cold, predatory patience. Voss crouched beside a shattered bio wall, his hands steady as he signaled the final strike. They had spent days sabotaging power grids, cutting off supply routes, turning the terrain into a maze of ambush points. The Zerkai didn't realize it yet, but the planet was no longer theirs. Then in the darkness, a single explosion ripped the sky apart. A chain reaction of detonations raced through the facility, tearing open gates, collapsing defense turrets, cutting out the biolights that once illuminated the jungle. Then, silence. Across the planet, hundreds of hollow-eyed captives stared. At their open cages, their minds struggling to process the impossible. The Daggerbrood screeched commands, their rigid formations breaking, their fear-based command structure unable to react to chaos. And then, from the darkness, Voss's voice rang out across the comms. "Now!" The jungle erupted in fury. Freed captives, some starving, some half-dead from weeks of torment, roared as they rushed the enemy. Weapons were ripped from the hands of stunned guards. The Zerkai were swarmed, torn down, hacked apart with stolen blades. For the first time in their history, the hunters screamed in terror. Voss grinned, stepping over the corpse of a fallen Daggerbrood commander. Not so fun when the prey fights back, is it? The fortress loomed ahead, a grotesque biostructure pulsing with sickly green light. This was the heart of the hunt, where the highest-ranking Daggerbrood warriors made their stand. Voss led the charge. The Zerkai fought back viciously. But something had changed. The humans were not just surviving anymore, they were winning. Guerrilla warfare turned into full-scale assault. Ambushes became coordinated strikes. The Daggerbrood's warriors, bred for dominance, found themselves unable to predict human tactics. Voss knew why. They had spent centuries fighting prey that followed instinct. But humans didn't follow instinct. Humans adapted. A Daggerbrood lieutenant screeched as Voss buried his stolen blade into its neck, twisting, letting the alien's lifeblood spill across the floor. Kowalski, bleeding from multiple wounds, pulled a stolen energy bomb from his vest, grinning, through crimson teeth. "Time to punch out, boss." Voss's stomach clenched. "Kowalski, don't—" But the big soldier was already running, charging into the Daggerbrood stronghold, laughing like a man who had already won. The detonation split the sky, a roaring fireball consuming the command tower, taking every last Daggerbrood leader with it. When the dust settled, the battlefield fell into eerie silence. The Zerkai survivors, those still breathing, stared in mute horror. For the first time in their history, they had lost. Voss exhaled, stepping over smoldering rubble, his voice a whisper. "That was for Kowalski, you bastards." The Daggerbrood had spent centuries broadcasting their hunts across the Dominion. Now Voss was going to use their own network against them. Rourke hacked into the neural relay, overriding the alien security measures with ruthless precision. One by one, every Zerkai world, every Dominion-controlled system, every warlord, every aristocrat, every slaver watched as their greatest warriors were slaughtered. Voss stepped into frame. His face was bloodied but unbroken, his uniform torn, his eyes shining with something beyond victory. It was certainty. "You call yourselves hunters." His voice was calm, controlled. The battlefield behind him was littered with Zerkai corpses. But the moment your prey fought back, you ran. A horrified silence settled over the galaxy. Voss took a slow breath, letting the words sink in. Then he spoke the words that would change history. "We are not prey. We are the storm. The Zerkai warlords watching the broadcast felt something they had never known before: fear. The signal spread beyond the Dominion, reaching species that had once dismissed humanity as an afterthought. Some recalculated their stance on human diplomacy. Others, watching the carnage unfold, marked humanity as the next great threat. And as the last Zerkai forces fled the planet, Voss knew the truth. Humanity was no longer the hunted. They were the apex predators. The Zerkai Dominion had never suffered a total defeat, until now. Across their empire, the unthinkable happened. Fear spread like wildfire. Their elite dagger-brode hunters were dead. Their command structure shattered. Their empire, once unchallenged, now stood vulnerable, and every species in the galaxy saw it happen. Voss stood aboard the captured Zerkai warship, staring down at the planet below. It was a graveyard now, a world soaked in alien blood. But the war wasn't over. This was just the first battle. He turned to the thousands of freed human captives, watching as they stood taller, prouder, no longer afraid. They had proven something, undeniable. Humanity was not prey. Voss inhaled sharply, his mind already planning. The Zerkai would regroup. They would come back. And next time, they would not underestimate humanity. But it didn't matter. Because next time, humanity would be the ones hunting them. And when the Zerkai finally understood that, there would be nothing left of their empire but dust. The warship pierced the void, carrying its cargo of survivors, legends, and ghosts. As it crossed into human-controlled space, the response was immediate. The Terran defense fleet scrambled, fighters escorting them in a silent, reverent formation. The ship docked at Luna Base, and the moment the survivors stepped onto the platform, the world erupted. Across every colony, every military installation, every corner of human civilization, the broadcast played. The lost had returned. Cities erupted in celebration. But the joy was laced with something heavier: caution. Because in that same broadcast, the galaxy had seen what humanity was capable of. In the halls of Earth's government, the mood was far from celebratory. A council convened, holographic displays flickering above a massive war table. "We've been naive," one senator muttered. "We thought we were just another voice in the cosmic choir. Turns out we're a war drum." "We have a choice," another said grimly. "Do we reach out for alliances, or do we prepare to strike first?" The debate raged, but one thing was clear: humanity would never be prey again. And Voss? Voss and his team were immortalized. Faces on every news feed, names burned into the history books, military dossiers studied by future soldiers. They were no longer just survivors. They were legends. Voss stood alone at the bridge of the captured Zerkai warship, staring into the black expanse. The stars were quiet. They always were, after a battle. His reflection stared back at him from the glass, but he barely recognized the man he had become. He had been a soldier once, a protector. Now he was something else. He thought of Perseus 9, the first hunt, the bodies strung up like trophies. He thought of the jungle, the blood, the desperate first kill. He thought of Kowalski, grinning through the pain as he ran into the stronghold, with the energy bomb strapped to his chest. His stomach clenched. The war was over, but his mind refused to rest. This wasn't victory. This was the first wave. The Zerkai were not gone. They were humiliated. And that meant they would return. And next time they wouldn't underestimate humanity. Voss turned away from the stars. He needed to be ready, because he understood now. This had never been about survival. This was the first battle of a much greater war. The ripple effect was immediate. Across the galactic community, the power dynamic shifted overnight. For centuries, humanity had been ignored, dismissed as insignificant. Now they were impossible to ignore. Some species watched with caution. The Jethun Confederacy, once neutral, sent diplomatic envoys, their messages laced with carefully chosen words. Perhaps it is time our two peoples spoke formally. A gesture of alliance? A political ploy? No one knew. But the fact remained. Humanity was now a variable that needed accounting for. Others marked humanity as a threat. The Valak Imperium, warlords of the Outer Rim, issued a formal decree of concern. A species that fights like this is dangerous. Their growth must be monitored, controlled. Behind their careful words was the whisper of preemptive war. The Zerkai dominion crumbled from within. The once mighty hunters were now scattered survivors. Warlords turned on each other, seeking to place blame for the greatest humiliation in their species' history. Some called for vengeance. Others urged retreat, fearing what humanity had become. For the first time, they were no longer the predators. They were the prey. And Earth? Earth's military went into overdrive. There was no illusion of peace now. Weapons research accelerated. Military forces doubled. Warships were constructed in secret because humanity understood one thing. The next war was inevitable. And this time, they would strike first. The chamber was dark, lit only by the flickering glow of a holographic projection. The images played on an endless loop. Zerkai bodies strung from trees, the burning fortress, the silent battlefield littered with the corpses of once great hunters. High Warlord Krovash of the Zerkai Prime. Brood watched in silence, his 4 black eyes narrowing as he took in every detail. His mandibles twitched, not in rage, but in calculation. The fools in the Dominion Council saw only the humiliation. They screamed for war, for vengeance. But Krovash saw something deeper. Humanity was not strong because of their technology, not because of their weapons. They were strong because they evolved. No prey had ever fought back like this. No prey had ever broken the great hunters before. That meant humans were not prey. Krovash leaned forward, his claws clicking against the stone table. They learn. That is their greatest weapon. His mandibles curled into something almost like a smile. Then we will learn too. The next war would not be fought the same way. He would study them, adapt to them, and next time, it would not be the Zerkai who feared the dark. The encrypted transmission arrived without warning. It cut through Earth's most secure military networks, its origin unknown, its coding structure unlike anything humanity had ever seen. The Pentagon locked down. The United Terran fleet went to full alert. Voss was summoned to Luna Command, escorted by black-suited operatives, his access codes overridden. He stepped into the classified war room, where a dozen admirals and intelligence officers stared at the transmission in stunned silence. The message was simple, a single sentence, looping on screen. You are not the only apex predators in this galaxy, but we may need each other soon. The room was dead silent. No origin. No species identifier. Just a warning. Voss felt something cold settle in his gut. The Zerkai had been terrifying, but something was coming that even they feared. He gripped the edge of the war table, staring at the looping message, his mind racing. The war for humanity's place in the stars was just beginning, and whatever was out there, it had just noticed them.